Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Just like that, we are off to another tournament. We have Lake Norfolk in northern Arkansas on the Missouri-Arkansas border. It's an Ozark-style lake. It's not actually part of the White River, but it's really close to the White River. Man, I don't know what to expect. This is a lake that, I've never been to. I know what to expect from what the lake's gonna look like. I don't even know that I know anyone that has actually even ever fished the lake before, to be honest with you. It's not one that you hear much about. It's not one that I've ever fished in my 15 years of traveling the country. But having said that, I'm really excited to go there. I really like the Highland impoundment style lakes. This one I know has spotted bass, largemouth, and smallmouth. From what I understand, it's not a big weight fishery. 12 pounds a day, generally, from the little bit of research I've done online, is not a terrible bag. So if you can hit the teens 3 days in a row, I actually think you might have a pretty good tournament. Um, and I like that. I like tough events from a weight standpoint because when you start catching those 2+ pound fish, those are actually the ones that are going to help you. And again, from the little bit that I've seen online regarding it, it kind of seems like you can do well fishing for any of the species. So even though it's a smaller lake, I do think it's going to fish. I won't say big, but I think it's going to spread a lot of guys out. I think you're going to have guys that are floating around in the middle of the lake, and I think you're going to have guys that are beating the bank. Um, and I don't really know what I'm gonna do yet. I'm just starting the rod rigging process right now. And I should say I know what I'm gonna do. I know what baits I'm gonna use. I really need to get there to find out what the lake is setting up like, what stage the fish are in before I kind of try to commit to something. But I'm in a very unusual position for myself. I really don't feel like I've got much of a chance at this point to make the postseason, which is kind of mind-boggling to me. I've had two really mediocre events at best, and the guys that are doing well have had a couple of good tournaments in a row. So I really feel like I'm going there uh, to fish for big fish, knowing that if it doesn't happen, I'm probably gonna tank, but I was already kinda out of it from a point standpoint, so I'm fishing for the classic is how I look at it. Both this event and then Leech Lake, I am, fishing for big fish. I mean, that's the goal. So it's kind of freeing, it's kinda refreshing to not feel like I'm gonna be worried about just culling ounces by ounces. I'm really going to do what I can to generate some big bites. So I wanted to go over some of the baits that I thought I'd use. And again, it kind of just depends where the fish are at. And I have to point out one of the things that I'm pretty excited about too, and this is going to sound weird. The house that we rented is on the White River. It's not too far away, but apparently it's supposed to be really good for brown trout. So we might be able to get out and do some brown trout fishing on the off day, which would be pretty cool. So I'm kind of looking forward to that too. But during the tournament, we are really looking at generating better quality fish. Now, having said that, I don't know that I'm going to be chasing spotted bass on purpose. I think the better quality fish, if I had to guess, are going to be largemouth and smallmouth. If you catch a 2.5, 3 pound spotted bass, that's just a bonus fish. But I'm gonna be keen in more so, I feel like, on green and brown fish. And that's just the assumption that I feel like they're probably better quality. I guess I don't even know that for sure, but I think that's gonna be the case. From a fishing standpoint, it's first week of April. I think you're going to have primarily all the fish in a pre-spawn stage. They had a really cold blast of weather a few weeks ago, and from that standpoint, I don't see it being like a big time shallow bed fishing tournament. But I do think you're going to have some fish that are probably even on bed, majority of the fish pre-spawn, getting close to those ranges. Now, again, when you're talking about spotted bass and smallmouth, most of those fish, even if they're on bed, are going to be probably out a little bit deeper to the point where you're not going to be able to see them. So it's not going to be a sight fishing deal. Um, I think you're going to be looking, if you're talking forward facing sonar, I think there's going to be a lot of fish that are starting to move into the pockets. You're going to be looking out in front of the spawning pockets. I think there's probably, I'm assuming there's a bunch of standing timber in this lake. So there's very possibly a bunch of fish hanging around some of the cedar trees, kind of just starting to set up to spawn. And then I think from the bank, you're going to have the ability to do some power fishing, and you're probably going to be able to slow down and throw your shaky heads and your drop shots like a lot of the Ozark region lakes tend to fish. Um, so I'm gonna have a little bit of both. Obviously, like I said, I really want to power fish this event. I really want to be able to cover water. I want to fish for better quality fish. And I'm gonna be looking at throwing some bigger baits too. When I say bigger baits, I'm not talking giant glide baits, but I'm definitely gonna have some glide baits rigged up and ready to roll. I think that's a great bait to generate better than average size fish of all three species of bass. So I'm gonna have some glide baits rigged up. I'm gonna have some vibrating jigs like the slobber knocker with the power stinger on the back. That's going to be for covering a lot of water. I think there's still going to be a pretty good shallow crank bite. So your Fritz side 5 is going to be a big player. I think there's going to be a lot of crankbaits again in this tournament. The Ozarks are known for like that wiggle warp bite. They're known for that pre-spawn rock transition bite. So I think that's going to be a player. And then obviously I'm going to have a couple of baits to slow down and pick apart any cover that I find that's in the water with something like the Ozark rig with a pit boss or some of your smaller finesse jigs. This is a little spotty tungsten Picasso jig with a 3-inch pit boss on the back. That's how I want to fish, guys. Those are going to be the baits that I'm looking to fish with more. But if I'm feeling like the fish are not set up in a manner that I want to fish, that's when I'll probably start reverting back to some fish that are um, more forward facing sonar related, maybe suspended out from some of those spawning areas. And that's when you might be looking at things like the core tackle hover rig with a fluke. I actually think the scamper rig could be really good in this. Depending on what the water temperature is, there is a range in the Ozark region where like your wake baits can be deadly. And honestly, the scamper rig on a fluke is kind of like a wake bait right under the surface. So I think that this could be really good. Obviously, if we're talking about fish that are down a little bit deeper, I'm gonna have this is the hover tricks, the bass tricks, hover tricks, and then that's just our strut head on it for shaking a minnow and actually getting them to go. Now, I do think that that's probably going to be a major player in this event. I don't see how it couldn't be, to be honest with you. It is on the other Ozark lakes throughout the year, but I think that'll be good. And then I'm also going to be looking at throwing some bigger swim baits. Now, there's not much in terms of like docks, but if there is some docks or there is some timber, like I said, some of the bigger swim baits could be a player, and I've got that rigged up on a core tackle tush. I mean, I could rattle off 50 baits that I think could work in this event. These are the ones that I'm going to look to go with. I've got kind of the power fishing side of things, and then I've got more of my finesse side of things. I mean, yeah, you could put a drop shot on. Yes, a shaky head. Yes, a wacky rig. Yes, a top water. I mean, pretty much you name it. You go to an Ozarks lake and you could almost do everything. It just kind of depends on what you want to fish. Do you want to fish deep? Do you want to fish shallow? Do you want to fish clear water? Do you want to fish dirty water? Do you want to fish standing timber? Do you want to fish docks? There's a little bit of everything. So I'm gonna have probably 20 rods rigged up for this. And the hope is by the time the tournament comes, I've got it narrowed down to like 5. And it's either gonna be more of a finesse thing, a suspended thing, maybe it's a power fishing deal. Not really sure. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the idea of fishing free, going, committing to it, and not really worrying about catching a limit, not really worrying about points. Just go, have a good time, see what happens. That's what we're going to be at. So, um, Yeah, it'll be interesting. I haven't even really looked at the weather to see what that's shaping up to look like, but I'll start doing that once we get there, and we'll go from there. So, thanks for watching. I appreciate all the support, and stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.